My name is Miranda. I'm a bachelor student in hotel management from the School of Hotel and Tourism Management. Welcome to the Plenary Section 2, UNWTO Ulysses Prize Laureate Open Forum Part 2. Now, may I introduce the 4 laureate plus honorable speakers today. First of all, I would like to invite Professor Pauline Sheldon. Professor Kaye Chon, please. Professor Eduardo Fayos-Solà, please. Professor Richard Butler, please. And we would also like to invite the 2 section chairs. Ms. Vanessa Yeung, please. Mr. Felix Otoo, please. Both of them are the PhD students of SHTM. May I now pass the time to Ms. Yeung, please.
Dear honorable guests and audience, good morning. Welcome and thank you very much for joining these plenary sections, the UNWTO Ulysses Prize Laureate Open Forums Part 2. So, I'm Vanessa. I'm come from Hong Kong. I'm the PhD student in the School of Hotel and Tourism Management, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And with me is...
I am Felix Elvis Otoo. I'm from Ghana. I'm also a PhD student with the School of Hotel and Tourism Management, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And we are indeed delighted to have with us as many as 4 UNWTO Ulysses Prize laureates, and we have the opportunity to learn from them some valuable insights into the tourism sector.
And UNWTO Ulysses Prize is an award given by UNWTO to those distinctive scholars for their contributions in tourism, on their innovations and knowledge. And this prize is also commonly known as Nobel Prize in Tourism.
Ladies and gentlemen, kindly give us your attention as we introduce each speaker.
Now, we would like to have a warm welcome to our first honorable guest speaker, Professor Sheldon. Professor Pauline Sheldon is a Dean and the Emeritus Professor in the School of Travel Industry Management in University of Hawaii. She received the UNWTO Ulysses Prize Award in 2008. And her major research involves corporate social responsibility, sustainable tourism, and knowledge management in tourism. And she was the first president of the International Academy for the Study of Tourism. And she's also a co-founder of TriNet with Dr. Jafari. And she also received the TTRA Lifetime Achievement Award in 2009 for her contributions to tourism. And Professor Sheldon has published over 70 journal articles and 4 books. And her currently working on a book entitled Tourism Change Markers, exploring her interest in how tourism can be an agent of positive change. Thank you.
We are also privileged to have with us Professor Eduardo Fayos-Solà. Professor, welcome. Professor Eduardo Fayos-Solà has had an extensive experience in tourism policy and governance, and over 25 years of service at the UNWTO, where he has served in the capacity of Director for Europe and Executive Secretary for the UNWTO Knowledge Network. He is also a Fellow of the International Academy for the Study of Tourism. He is a Senior Advisor at the George Washington University.
Now we will have another honorable guest, Professor Richard Butler. Professor Butler is an emeritus professor of the Strathclyde Business School in the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow in UK. He received the UNWTO Ulysses Prize in 2016. He has published 20 books and more than 200 journal articles on tourism. And his major main research area is destination development, tourism in remote area, and the applications of sustainability. and resilience to tourism development. He was the past president of International Academy for the Study of Tourism and Canadian Association of Leisure Studies. He's also acted as a consultant, advisor of UNWTO at several levels in government in UK, Australia, and Canada. And he recently worked on exploring the relationships between tourism, political change, war, and religions. Thank you.
Last but not least, we have with us a very astute academician. He is Professor Kaye Chon. Professor Kaye Chon is currently the chief editor of the Journal of Travel and Tourism Marketing, the Asia Pacific Journal of Tourism Research. He is also a graduate of the University of Maryland, the Georgia State University, University of Nevada, and Virginia Tech. He is indeed listed among the world's who is who, a very prestigious award that includes people including Kofi Annan and Bill Gates.
Thank you, Felix. Before we get started the sections, we would like to have some reminders to all of us. This is a conversational format, and also before we will ask a list of questions to our honorable guests. At the end of the sections, we'll open the question to the floor. Due to the time limitations, please allow us to remind all of you to answer the questions in less than 3 minutes. Thank you very much for your understanding.
Professors, welcome once again. Let's get the ball rolling now. We first of all want to know about your most memorable experiences since you got into tourism as a career. Any of you can begin sharing with us kindly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sorry. No.
Okay. Memorable experiences are mostly, I think, personal, and therefore it's difficult to put it in an academic context. Probably the thing that is blasted into my mind was as a young teaching instructor facing the blackboard and my mind going totally blank. And it still hits my memory. I was talking about representative fractions in a geography class to first-year students. And I totally lost the ability to divide appropriately on the blackboard. And it brought home to me the fact that most of us have no teaching experience. We're not trained as teachers. And I thought, oh my God, if only I had had a teaching course. And that has been an experience which sort of has stayed with me, that I think the day you don't feel a bit apprehensive going on stage, going in front of a class, giving a seminar, is probably the day you shouldn't do it anymore. So as a memorable experience, that one has stuck with me for 46 years. It's a negative one, but it's had a positive side.
You know, when I look back at my most memorable experiences, a lot of them are about the conversations I've had with fellow academics and industry people. You know, when you really sit down at the end of a dinner or whatever and have a really deep conversation with somebody, and some of the things I've done that I'm proud of in my career came out of those conversations. You know. For example, TEFI, you know, the Tourism Education Futures Initiative. Dan Fesmeyer and I were sitting down after a TTRA dinner and not much going on, and we started talking about the future of tourism and what really needed to shift. And the conversation we had surprisingly ended up creating an organization which is, I hope, having some influence. So I think those deep conversations that I've had in my career with some people here on the stage as well really have been the start of the ball rolling to create something. So those are the things I've enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Memorable experience. I think another way to put that is day I can never forget.
Sure.
Is 11th of January 2011. That's the day when this building, this Hotel Icon building, opened to our students. I must correct. I think the second most memorable day, the day I married my wife, was most memorable. I have to make my record straight, just in case my wife hears this later. So the day when this building opened, because from the initial conversation I had with president of university, with the idea of building hotel for our school and our school dedicated building, from that day to opening, it was approximately 8 years. That was the most challenging time in my life. Many issues, political issues, when there is such a huge cost involved, 170 million US dollars to come with this building. And I thought I was doing this for the future of our students, developing future leaders. And the night before, I couldn't sleep at all because I got so excited. I was imagining how the students will be, walking into the classroom and then excited. So I couldn't sleep at all. My wife thought that I had some problems. I said, no, I'm so happy, that's why I cannot sleep. The next day, it was January, very cold winter day in Hong Kong. I came to office early in the morning because I knew that the first class will be conducted at 8:30. Starting at 8 o'clock, I was outside the building waiting for students. About 8:15, I saw two female students approaching the building. I was very emotional. I had tears in my eyes. I wound up staying there for 2.5 hours, shaking hands with every student walking in. I said, I want to welcome you to our new school, this new beginning. Some students thought that I was waiting to see who is coming late, but that was not the reason. And that was very memorable in terms of why I did this and the future of our school and so on and so forth. Thank you.
And thank you. I would like to relate to what was said yesterday here in the first panel, Ulysses panel, when many of our colleagues refer to the moment of truth as when you go from theory to practice. So I would like to refer to my moment of truth when I was pushed to go into practice from being a university professor to actually landing on hard ground. And someday in 1991, I was told that I had been promoted to head of tourism in Spain. And that was so tough enough, because for a university professor it meant to actually implement what you were saying. You had written articles and you were proposing things, but now you have to perform. But for those of you who do not remember the dates, Spain was preparing for the Olympics in Barcelona and the Universal Expo in Seville. So at the same time, I had to land on hard ground and take responsibility for tourism for two major world-class events. And I have to say that it was quite a moment to remember. And I think I survived, kind of, my hair is lacking, but I kind of survived thanks to many of my colleagues and many of them here. So that was interesting.
Thank you very much, professors. I believe for many young scholars, the general ideas that comes to mind when they see Ulysses Prize winners like you is that perhaps you've had a very easy journey. What has been some of the sacrifices you've made to get this far?
Yeah, perhaps I can rejoin. I mentioned my first one, my hair. My first sacrifice was giving my hair because of hard work and many hours. And then I think kind of you give a little bit of your personal life. If you want to get serious about what you're doing, and if you're committed to doing something which is important for you and perhaps important for others, then you have to put long hours. So in a way that is kind of the sacrifice. Mind you, it's a very good sacrifice. You feel good about that, except when you one morning you wake up and you realize you have spent 25 years in the job and the time is going by, so you have to recover, right?
Anyone would like to share more?
Thank you. Cognizant that I'm the only woman on the panel, I will address that side of things a little bit here. I wouldn't call this necessarily a sacrifice, but my husband and I decided not to have children. And I think that sacrifice, which was quite a big one in a sense, allowed me to succeed to the degree that I have. And I have such respect and such admiration for women who have children and yet still are able to succeed. And I think that balance that we face, perhaps more than men, is a sacrifice that every woman in a career has to deal with. And many, of course, choose to not climb the ladder as fast or as rapidly as men can and do. And I think that's okay. You know, the balance in life is important. And so, whilst I did not choose that, I think the women that did choose to have a family and be successful in their career deserve all the accolades that they can get to do both of those. Thank you.
I think Pauline's right. Sacrifices, like experiences, are personal. I am very happy with what I've done. I'm not consciously aware of making sacrifices that have really hurt. I've enjoyed being a geographer. I've enjoyed very much being in tourism. Choosing to write on one thing instead of another is hardly a sacrifice, and those of us that are in academia, I think, are privileged and have a relatively light life. It's hard, it's competitive, but I wouldn't swap it for many other activities that people engage in. So in that sense, I think we are privileged, and the sacrifices, other than the kind that Pauline's talking about, are really minor and inconsequential. Alison Gill and I were talking about being geographers in tourism, and geography doesn't get much praise compared to some other disciplines, although Einstein is supposed to have said that he would like to have been a geographer, but it was too difficult, so he went into physics. Whether that's true, I don't know. But then out of geography we do tourism, and that puts it right at the bottom. But if you enjoy what you're doing, it isn't a sacrifice. And so to those of you who are starting, make sure you enjoy as much as you can what you're doing, what you write about, what you study. And then the sacrifices you have to make, everybody does. We, I think, as academics, make somewhat less than other people in the hard world.
Another way, again, I can look at this, it's not really sacrifice, but just reflecting back on my life. There were times which was hard. I must say that when I arrived in America with one suitcase and few $100s that my mother gave to me, I have to make it, and it was not easy. I remember that in 10 years of my university study, undergraduate, master, and PhD, I was working full-time. I had a full-time job for 9.5 years. Only half year I couldn't work because my visa didn't allow me to work. So I had to work really hard. And I remember that my time was very precious. I was always short of the time to sleep. So that was sacrifice, I must say. But I enjoyed working. When my son was little, he always saw me working on the computer. I said, why do you do this? I said, I'm doing research. Do you like it? I said, I do enjoy it. Do you really enjoy it? Do you mean it? I said, yeah, to me, doing research is like playing golf. I enjoy it. He looked at me and said, wow, that's very strange. But, well, depending on how you look at it, that one can say you sacrifice, but I enjoy it. Recently, when I went to Thailand, I was invited to one university to give a lecture. My lecture was nothing about tourism or hospitality. It was about life. The title of my lecture is Life is Long, Life is Beautiful. And I think life is long, not short. There are a lot of things we can do in life. And I think reflecting on my life, there are many beautiful moments. So I think depending on how you look at it, life can be beautiful or it can be just troublesome. But I enjoy my life and my career.
Okay, thank you for all of the professors sharing such valuable experience to all of us. Now we would like to move on to other discussions on the brings into the discussions to the contemporary issues in tourism. Tourism is ever fast-growing industry. So, all of you, may I ask for some opinion from all of you? Do you perceive any changes in foreseeable futures of tourism sectors? Please feel free to discuss about.
Perhaps because I'm trying to finish a book which is called The Future of Tourism. I like to take the question. And definitely, I think that the future is not going to be what it used to be. That's a made-up sentence. But it is, I think it's kind of true. I think we began tourism like a very low knowledge entry. You could join tourism even as an entrepreneur with rather low level of knowledge. And those times, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years ago, probably are gone. And now this industry is going to require high levels of knowledge, both because of the business requirements of running a successful entrepreneurship, but also because of the macro issues that we have, the strategic issues we have. Like tourism is now so much involved into the life and into the world, that everything happening in the world, call it climate change, call it terrorism or safety, call it development, call it any kind of strategic issues, tourism is involved. And the only way we will be able to solve that is by having a high level of knowledge. That's why I think that what was taken up yesterday, the much better cooperation between academia and business and government is going to be essential.
Thank you very much. Who would like to add on?
Yeah. Eduardo, I think you're absolutely right that knowledge is a key to taking us into the future. However, I think something else is needed that's perhaps more profound. We're living in an age of profound disruption, and we cannot ignore that. Yes, we can find knowledge, but we need a shift. I think tourism needs to wake up to the fact that it can contribute to the social issues, to the crises that exist. And I think if we can wake up to our duty and our responsibility to improve the well-being and the consciousness of everybody, not only everybody, but nature and animals as well, then we can really be proud of the tourism sector. I think there's been a lot of me and not we in our industry. You know, a lot of tourists in the past have been about their own pleasure. A lot of private sector has been about increasing profit. And I think that needs to shift so that we're looking at tourism for the greater good. And until we do that, I don't think we'll really step up to the plate of what this incredible industry and field of study is really all about.
I think this question can be answered in many, many different ways. And listening to this question, what I'm thinking is that in macro perspective, I believe the modern day tourism is byproduct of industrial revolution in England. And after that people became more affluent, had more leisure time, started traveling. So travel has been all just one way, usually from Europe and North America to other parts of the world. And that was first phase from Europe, and then after Second World War, from United States. In the US, with development of economy in the United States, and the concept of leisure time started, and people like Kevin Wilson started a hotel chain called Holiday Inn. Hilton started opening hotel. When they first opened hotel outside the US, Mr. Hilton gave a speech in London that this hotel is open for Americans traveling internationally. That's how tourism started. But I believe that the third phase of development of tourism is Asian phase. The center of gravity of world tourism is definitely coming to this part of the world. I mean, for many, many reasons. One is quantity in terms of number of tourists coming to Asia and also coming from Asia. Who would have imagined that more than 100 million Chinese will travel internationally per year? Now, far more than 100 million Chinese are traveling, and so are with the Koreans, Japanese, Vietnamese, and Indonesians, so on and so forth. But also in terms of quality, you know, I often say that for the same 747 or 787 airplane that you're flying between Hong Kong and New York, there's such quite a difference in experience between, say, Cathay Pacific or Korean Air or Singapore Airlines with United Airlines. Well, if you fly United, if you are not beaten up, you'll be lucky. But no service at all. Not only in quantity, but quality of services, I think. So that is one major change to me in terms of the center of gravity. I think challenge, however, is developing leadership for our part of the world. We have many young Asians in the audience. I think this is a real challenge. How we can continue to develop Asia's leaders for global hospitality and tourism industry. Still, one thing that really bothered me was when I first came to Hong Kong. Every five-star hotel I visited to meet the GM, in those days, GMs were totally 100%, they were Swiss, German, occasionally some French or Americans, but most of them. But this all started because of tradition, historical reasons. Because when tourism started in Hong Kong, most of the tourists coming to Hong Kong were from these countries. You had to find the GM who can understand the behavior and communicate with them. Now, in Hong Kong, every hotel, most of the hotels, 80% of guests staying in hotels are Asians. So I think we have to really think our concept of leadership. So this is one big challenge that's why we built this hotel, Hotel Icon. We wanted to use this hotel as a incubating ground, the young people can aspire to reach to the higher level of career. So I think that will be one changes that we can see in the future. Thank you.
I think if there's one thing humankind has proved, it's that we are absolutely useless at predicting the future. I agree with everything Kaye said. You can argue with hindsight, all of that we should have seen. Since tourism has evolved, it's included more people. As people have got more affluent, tourism has spread through society. So it should have been entirely predictable that the East and Asia would emerge as a tourism power, both origin and destination. I think if we do try and look at the future, there are sort of two elements of change. One is that tourism is not very different at its core from what it always has been. It's people enjoying themselves, or trying to, on holiday. And how they do that changes around the edges, but it's still the same. In 50 years' time, we will still have mass tourism, and we will still be talking about the problems of mass tourism. It won't go away, it's just going to get bigger. What we need to worry about, I think, are the revolutionary changes. And they are relatively few and far between, but they're very powerful when they occur. Low-cost airlines. It should have been predictable, but it wasn't the scale at which low-cost airlines would come in. The impact of electronics, totally, has changed much of the way that we do things. But we are very bad at predicting those. So what it means, I think, is that we need flexibility, and we need to develop resilience to be able to handle the changes when they come along. You mentioned the last books I was working on was religion, political change, terrorism. We face all of those, war, but there are short-term disruptions by and large. The tragedies in London, in Paris and elsewhere will make a small dent on tourism. I think we are kidding ourselves and making a mistake if we see that tourism will change fundamentally. Even after 9/11, it changed security, it didn't change the face and very much about the level of tourism. Tourism itself is extremely resilient and will survive. It's whether we can adapt to what happens to it and from it that's going to matter.
Okay. Just a follow-up question on some of the comments you've made. For example, Professor Chon, you talked about tourism in Asia, and you talked about the fact that the industry has to, in a way, position itself towards some of these changes that are likely to occur and are occurring. Do you have any specific recommendations for the industry practitioners as well as academia?
I think industry changing, I've been speaking very loudly about this issue of need for developing Asian leaders and this and that, we begin to see some very positive changes. In Hong Kong, there are many five-star hotels in Hong Kong. And the Peninsula, Hong Kong, is symbolically a leading hotel. I mean, it's the face of the hotel industry because it's all this five-star hotel is face of hotels, Hong Kong's hotel industry. And I was very glad that Peninsula Hotel, which is now 87 years old, for the first time, now they have a GM, general manager, who is a local Hong Kong person, local Hong Kong Chinese. More importantly, local Hong Kong Chinese person is the GM. I think symbolically that sends a very strong message to the rest of the industry. And then other owners are beginning to realize, oh, a local Hong Kong lady can be a general manager of one of our hotels. So I think that was awakening. At the same time, they were sending a very strong message to our students or young people because they thought there was a glass ceiling. They cannot go higher. But now begin to see that they can aspire. So I think these are some real changes occurring, which is very exciting. When I taught 15 years in the United States before I came to Hong Kong, when I taught students in America, a typical American student, the problem I had with them was they were just over-ambitious. They think they can be a GM in a five-star hotel in 5 years. They think 6 years is too far. So that was a little bit too ambitious, too unlikely to happen. Whereas our students are just opposite, almost too humble. If you ask them, why do you want to study hotel management? They said, I want to get a job. That's it. They do not even talk about GM or anything like this because they didn't see that role models. Although they thought there was a ceiling to them. Now our students are a lot more with higher aspirations, and they're thinking about starting their own businesses, becoming more entrepreneurial. So I think these are very exciting for me to see.
Thank you very much. Following up to some of the discussions so far, Professor Fayos-Solà, you've made a little mention about the events that are occurring in UK. Professor Butler has also made mention of same. What are the changes you're expecting that tourism would go through in the face of these events that are increasingly coming up on the global scale? Because now issues of terrorism are no longer between nations, but now they happen internationally. So what are some of the issues that tourism would have to take notice of?
The issue of safety and the issue of terrorism is not new. I remember that back in the 1993, we had a UNWTO General Assembly in Bali, and this issue was central to the topic. The US was worried in the context of the international tourism because of criminality happening in popular destinations like Florida, and some other countries were already concerned about safety in tourism. So this is, as Professor Butler very well mentioned, we are seeing nothing new. What it is new, perhaps, is the way we are reacting to it. I would be perhaps sometimes more concerned, not about the fact of concrete events, as Dick Butler mentioned, but the sometimes exaggerated response that we may have to those things, or to using lack of safety as an excuse to get too much control about public decisions, right? So all in all, I think that safety is going to be a concern in the future, but I think some other concerns are deeper than that one. For example, development is an issue. We have a world which is very much communicated because of information technology, but also because of tourism. Tourism makes everyone more aware of what is the rest of the world. So inequalities and injustice is less palatable now. It is less easy to accept. So that will be growing. So we'll have more people interested in traveling and participating in the benefits of tourism. We'll have to respond to that. But at the same time, we'll have a lot of concern about climate change. For example, our industry sometimes is too optimistic. We like to say we like to show that we are 11%, yesterday the figure was mentioned again, 11% of world GDP, but we are only contributing 5% to pollution and contamination and greenhouse gases. How can that be? Tourism is 11% and it's intensive in the use of energy, but we are only contaminating 5%. Something is funny here. So I think we'll have to, number one, get more hold of the real facts. Do not exaggerate the facts. Do not overreact to the facts. So have better analysis and then better policy. That's how I see it.
Thank you very much.
Professor Butler, would you like to add on?
Well, Eduardo, I agree with everything Eduardo said. I think we need to look back in order to look forward. Most of the problems we have already encountered. It's how we handle them that really matters. You can go back and read travelers' tales from 300 years ago, and they were still worried about terrorism and violence, international events and so forth. Part of our problem is the speed at which events are covered and the demand for knee-jerk, immediate responses. And, you know, we have people in power who love knee-jerk tweet responses immediately, and it doesn't help matters very much. Eduardo's point about the pollution aspects are, I think, important. I think one of the great misperceptions is sustainable tourism. As a geographer, I'm wholeheartedly in favor of sustainable development. I think sustainable tourism is a misnomer. The travel component alone prevents tourism ever being sustainable. Operations for tourism can be sustainable, the hotel, restaurants, services, and so on. The transport element cannot be and will not be. So we should drop the garbage that tourism can be sustainable. It can't be. Lots of things can't be, and we need to be bold and say that. How do we make it more sustainable? How do we make it less harmful? How do we integrate appropriate measures to make it less harmful, less polluting? And when you look around the world now, there are many places that are protesting that there is too much tourism. Venice is a classic case, but Venice is not alone. Edinburgh, which is close to where I live, is protesting that it may lose its World Heritage status because of the redevelopment of the historic town centre and the creation of hotels and too many tourists. The spread of Airbnb and some of the issues that goes with that. I think that one of the big issues in the future is that tourism has done so well, and we are so reluctant to actually tackle the issues that it raises. I think tourism is wonderful. I think the fact that 1 billion people can travel and benefit from it is one of the greatest achievements of mankind. But you don't get that sort of development without cost. And we seem very reluctant to actually deal with the costs. If you say we need to get back to carrying capacity, everybody says that's a dead concept. We can't handle that. But we handle capacity in everything. We don't want to do it in tourism or leisure generally. So I think it is important that we look at how we actually handle and control tourism. We have been spectacularly successful in developing it. We need to be equally successful in controlling it, and particularly the negative aspects.
Okay, thank you, Professor Butler. So now we have a questions to Professor Sheldon. So we noticed that you are the female Ulysses winner among all the winners. So what does it mean to you? Would you like to share some?
It meant a lot. Yeah, to be the first woman to receive this was a great honor, a very unexpected honor. But it also really shines the light on why that is, you know, why there isn't another woman or 6 other women up here. And that brings into question, you know, women's role at the same level. And I think there's a lot today, those of you who are on TriNet, you're reading a lot about equity. And this is not just gender equity, but it's also diversity in every other dimension. But I caution against quantitative equity, and that's, I think, where the focus is. You know, we need so many women and so many men. There needs to be a gender balance quantitatively. But I think, you know, as I look to the future, and I hope to see more women here, that the qualitative nature of equity also is looked at. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that both men and women are very capable. But women, I think, bring a different way of knowing, a different way of researching, a different way of understanding concepts in the world, including tourism. And so it's not about one better than the other. But I think if we can, you know, raise more women to the higher level, then there will be a broader understanding given the traits that women bring. And there's nothing against men, of course. I love men, and men have been very supportive of me, all of them here, so there's no problem with that. And it's not really men against women or counting. It's about the female traits that I think can be brought in through men or through women. I have male traits. Kaye has some female traits, you know, the caring and whatever. You know, that's the way it is. I started off as a mathematician and then an economist, and I was always one or two of women in a class of men, and so it's not been uncommon in my life to be like this. And so that's how, you know, I did the first part of my career, and, you know, my economic studies took me through the first part of my career, and then somehow something happened where I decided that I needed to broaden my understanding and listen more inside to what it was I wanted to focus on for the rest of my career. And so, you know, it meant an awful lot to me to get this award, and I'm very fortunate that I did. But I've, as a consequence of that, spent quite a lot of time working with other women. I committed, after I got this award, to mentor junior faculty, women junior faculty, and spend time with them and encourage them to dig deeply into their inner knowing and really not question their intuitions, their way of wanting to live their life, because it can be different. And so, you know, there are a number of initiatives in our field, one called Women Academics in Tourism. I was not responsible for starting that, but it's a very good group of women trying to get to the bottom of what it means to build your career as a young scholar in tourism, as a woman, and how that is different. And so, you know, the belligerent attitude of, oh, we've got to get those men to understand it, you know, that's not the way to do it, I think. It's to honor the incredible skills and building of our field that many men have done, and now adding more. So I think the more that women can rise to the top and can bring with them their different way of understanding and studying the world, the whole of tourism will be better off for it. Thank you.
So, if I may follow up with a question for you, do you still believe that a gendered look at tourism is still necessary, so that we still look at women, traditionally, women being seen as lower than men in a way? A gendered look at tourism. Do you still think that debate is still relevant? So that
No, women are not less. No. Did I not understand your question?
No,
Sorry.
what I'm asking is, do you think we should still look at a gendered view of tourism?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yes, I think so, because we're different. We're not the same. And to look at it as the same and to remove that gender lens, if you will, denies a lot of the strengths that women can bring. But it's not about more or less. It's just different. Does that answer your question?
Very good. Thank you very much. Professor Chon, you are the first Asian recipient of the UNWTO Ulysses Prize, and we are indeed very grateful for that. Professor Chon, we want to know, in your career, you talked about the beginning of SHTM, Hong Kong Polytechnic University. What are some of the challenges you have encountered as the Dean of the School of Hotel and Tourism Management?
Thank you. I expect that you'll ask some question about me being first Asian recipient of Ulysses Prize. I have 3 minutes, right?
Yes.
So first of all, when I was when I got a phone call from UNWTO that congratulations, you have been selected as the recipient of UNWTO Ulysses Prize. To be honest, I was very shocked because I didn't expect. You know, for Ulysses Prize, there's no, you are not applying for it. They are just giving the award to somebody by a panel of members who make an assessment. So I was kind of shocked and I was very humbled. But coincidentally, the day I got the phone call was the day this hotel opened. So I thought it was kind of symbolic, even though it was not planned that way, but it happened to be that way. And I was reflecting on my career and life. And as I said earlier, I think sometimes in our lives we have some difficulties or complex or handicaps, but they can be turned around into an opportunity. I think if I look back on my career, I was able to achieve a lot of things because of my own complex, I must say, or disadvantages. When I arrived in America, as I said, as an undergraduate student from Korea, I had many difficulties, financial difficulties, language I had to learn. In fact, the first subject I had to take in my undergraduate was English Literature 101. And the first reading was something called Beowulf. I had no idea. And then I had to read Alexander Chaucer, which was slightly better, and Shakespeare was better, but I enjoyed it. And there were many difficulties, so I had to work. My attitude was that if I put in the same amount of effort as my fellow American students, I'm bound to be behind them. There's no way I can be competitive. So I thought that if I could double my effort, maybe I can be more competitive. But if I can triple my effort, maybe I can be even better. One thing usually I'm not very boasting about this, but when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, miracle happened. I graduated top of my class. So my alma mater recognized me as the most outstanding graduate in the last 40 years. I was very flattered. But the point I'm trying to make is that this complex I had actually made me stronger and built-in, gave me some advantages. Now, I always had a complex of what I was studying because when I was undergraduate student, studying hospitality and tourism, I noticed that many students in my class, actually they were not really interested in studying tourism. They couldn't make it in engineering. They couldn't make it maybe in economics or in business. And they chose, wow, hotel and tourism management sounds interesting, sounds easy. That was a kind of thinking. Then I clearly chose my major because I really had a passion for this field. And that was complex. And second complex I had was when I was pursuing my PhD, and I had to sit in classes with students from other departments, psychology, economics. When they heard that I was a PhD student in tourism or hotel management, they were always joking. They were teasing me and saying, "What courses are you taking? Are you taking advanced wine tasting course as a PhD student?" It's kind of joke because they are always condescending on this field. All this complex actually made me think. And so in 1995, I created something in the United States called Annual Graduate Research Conference for graduate students, which now became a major conference in the United States that every PhD student in the US has to attend the conference every year because it became a career mart too. CRE, International CRE, has an award called McCool Breakthrough Award. They are recognizing somebody for making a breakthrough in education and research. In 2012, our school received that McCool Breakthrough Award based upon Hotel Icon project. Yesterday, I got an email from ICRE that I'm receiving another McCool Breakthrough this coming July for this graduate conference I created. And then, now, coming back to your question about being Asian, Ulysses Prize recipient, as I said, my complex was, the reason I went to America to study was because I thought America was center of the world. It was. We Asians tend to think that whatever is in America, whatever is in Europe are greater. That's how people think. I said that, we have to change that thinking. When we say 21st century of Asia, particularly when it comes to tourism economy, then we have to be proud and we have to take leadership, global leadership. Now we have students from 30-some countries coming to study in our school. When the first Swiss students came to Hong Kong, I said, wow, this is good. Now Swiss are coming to Hong Kong to learn hotel management. So this is symbolically is Asian era, new age for world tourism. So I think this Ulysses Prize bestowed to me was a kind of symbolic that finally the Asians are coming on board. We are making debut. So I think that is opening the door for many others to follow. I don't sound like a saint this morning, but I often speak about Bible. In the Bible, there is a story about Jesus Christ, who is the centerpiece. Before Jesus Christ came, the people of Israel always said that we're waiting for this great man called Messiah. And before Jesus, there was one man called John the Baptist who came and speaking loud and preaching. People thought he was the Messiah. John the Baptist said, no, I'm not. I came to prepare for a man who will come next to me, who will be greater than me. So I always consider myself as somebody like John the Baptist. I'm here to prepare for the great people to come after me. So that's what I've been doing for my career and for my life. That's why I came to Hong Kong, because Hong Kong Poly had a vision of making the school a leading school in the field. And I've been just dedicating myself with a grand purpose. So I think when I received the Ulysses Prize, I thought this is very symbolic. This is new era, new age, and we're preparing for many great people to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Chong. So I have a question to Professor Butler. Yesterday, all of our guest speaker has a keen discussions about the disconnections between academic and industry. And recently, American President Trump initiated to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. So what does it mean to tourism in terms of achieving the sustainable goal?
I don't think Donald Trump thinks about tourism at all. He hasn't tweeted on it, I don't think. I was born in the middle of the Second World War. I've lived through the Korean War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, fall of apartheid, all sorts of stuff. It's hard at my age, having gone through that, to worry too much about the Donald. I have faith in the American system that it will curtail some of his wildest wishes. I think we were a bit surprised the fact that he's actually done some of the things that he said he would do on the campaign trail. Because certainly in Britain we're used to politicians telling us everything they're going to do on the campaign trail, and you know very well they're not going to do it when they get into power. The climate change decision, I think it's unfortunate for the message that it sends. I don't really think it will make much difference. I don't think it will make much difference at all to tourism. I don't doubt climate change at all. I doubt to some degree how much we are responsible for it, because I'm not entirely satisfied with all of the science and the global climate models and so forth. But I don't think you can deny climate change. Tourism is a part of that. It's part of the cause of that. But so is everything. If we are going to be serious about climate change, we have to acknowledge it's far, far more complex. I just find it stupid, the idea of 4,000 people flying, most of them, to Paris to talk about emissions and climate change. They could have done it by video and stayed home and saved several tons of carbon. It's political. It's being seen. It's being heard that you're making. How much difference it's actually going to make, it isn't a binding, legally controllable agreement that's been set up. It's voluntary. And we know what happens with voluntary agreements. So I have no great faith in it. I think it's unfortunate Trump has pulled out because of the message that it sends. But in real terms, I don't think it will make a lot of difference. I think there is a real issue there. Tourism is part of that issue and part of the problem. I get very annoyed as a geographer with some background, limited, in climatology and meteorology, at the number of people that write about climate change who really don't have a clue and are second and third handing what other people have said. It is a real problem, but we're not tackling it in a way I think that many of us are serious. So I don't worry about the Donald pulling out. It's unfortunate. It won't make much difference. We still have a problem to deal with. But I live in a part of the world which will benefit from climate change. Northeastern Scotland will have fewer deaths from hypothermia, lower energy bills, better crop yields, and so on. It's a win-win for us. And part of the problem is that it's very hard to persuade people they should be doing things for the benefit of others. We don't really believe that much of what we do actually benefits others. And I think the only way we'll solve many of the problems is to bring it home to people that it's going to cost you more not to do things. It's going to cost you more to behave inappropriately than it is to behave appropriately. Money talks much more effectively than Trump or anybody else. And I think we need to sell it from the other point of view, that it's cheaper to do certain things than you do them because you feel a warm glow from doing it. So I think the financial argument is a much more powerful, permanent, effective one for tourism and for everything else to deal with something like climate change.
Thank you very much, Professor Butler. And finally, Professor Eduardo Fayos-Solà, I want to ask a question which I know you are very much interested in, because you are the person behind Spain's first tourism policy plan. I want to know, what is generally the attitude of government towards tourism policy development?
I got you well. You want to know about what is the government views to policy? Is that your question?
Yes, sir.
Again, I would agree with much of what has been said up to here regarding that we are not so good in predicting the future, and Dick said that. One of the reasons is because we tend to be reactive. It's not only that we are not able to see the future, it's that sometimes we don't want to see the future. And this happens to climate change. So talking on the issues that we have in front of us, one issue which is climate change, I think that the concern is not only climate change happening, but the speed at what it is happening, which is much faster than it was seen even 10 years ago. If you read the Nicholas Stern report, which was written in 2007, it's a Royal Commission, 2007 or so, even the forecast at that time that climate change would come much slower and the rise of the level of the seas would be much slower and so on. So I think that we are seeing things happening much faster than we thought. We are seeing climate change happening in front of our eyes. It's not the next generation or the other, it's our generation. We are seeing issues like development issues and the awareness for the need for development happening much faster than before. We are seeing issues of governance. I mean, young people, and I'm referring to many of you here, are not willing to admit the kind of governance that we have had in the past. So while we have admitted the idea of democracy for 200 years, now we want to see much more, and I hope you want to see much more, the real meaning of participation, the real meaning of taking democracy seriously. So because all those things in front of us, I think government has to change, and it has to change also regarding tourism. I think many governments have ignored tourism, have said, well, it's business, it's just one more business, you do what you want. And true that I took this seriously, and perhaps it has been the thing I'm proudest in my life. I was born in a country that basically developed because of tourism. When people say, sometimes I say, well, tourism is a powerful, it can be, it's not always, but can be a powerful tool for development. And some people look at me funny and they say, well, what do you mean? I mean, come on, give us an example. I say, well, there is this little poor country in the south of Europe, one of the poorest countries only in the world, only 60, 70 years ago. It's called Spain. And it has done a great deal forward. And it's not been a miracle. It has been partly and very much so because of the catalyst effect of tourism and society. And I don't mean only economics, because sometimes we take it wrong. We think tourism has an economic impact. But it has much more than that. It has a cultural impact. It has a knowledge impact. People become much more aware of things that they would not be aware otherwise. Within this framework, governments have been very, very slow in reacting. And as some of our colleagues were pointing out yesterday, we have gone through a neoliberal era in which the least government, the better, or the best. Government should keep quiet. And so we have also witnessed an era in which tourism, perhaps, especially at destination level, was very much without any kind of framework. And I mean framework not only from the terms of law, but from the terms of thinking, mental frameworks. And this produces bad effects. And Dick has again referred to cases like Venice and Edinburgh, and I would mention definitely now Barcelona. And many of you are aware that we are having a big problem because of success. I feel myself responsible. I did help for Barcelona to become a success. 30 years ago, Barcelona was a little city with not so much tourism because it was kind of dirty. And after the Olympics, we used the Olympics as a catalyst to make Barcelona famous and a good tourism destination. Now we can die of success. So now we need government, and I don't mean big government, I also mean government at local level. And I'm positive, I'm optimistic about this. I see many local and regional governments taking a much more proactive approach to tourism, and saying tourism can be a fantastic instrument for development, for well-being, for progress, but it will not happen automatically. There is nothing that will happen automatically. Those myths we have about market forces producing heaven are somehow to be proven. I don't think they are true. So I foresee a much more important role of government, especially at local level, and that will depend on many of you. That will depend on many of you thinking that you're not only in tourism as a business, but you are in tourism as an instrument for well-being, for progress, and for development. And only us with knowledge can help to that, and only us with knowledge can help governments to make good decisions regarding tourism.
Thank you very much for your constructive comments. And thank you again for all of the professors. And now we are really at the end of the sections. Now we would like to open the question to the floor. Please allow us to have some reminders. Each person asks one question, and try to ask your question as short and brief as possible. And each question try to ask within 1 minute. And if it is possible, please allow us to share your names and where are you from and where is your institutions. And who would like to start first? Okay, Lisa.
Thank you, Professor Butler. Your life cycle model remains one of the most cited articles still now. I would like to ask one question. As you mentioned just now about prediction of the future, that we can better predict. So how you predict the future, the survival of the life cycle model in the next 20 to 50 years? Thank you.
Well, I'm surprised, people are still talking about the damn thing. No, it is surprising. One produces a model. I'm mindful that I got in contact with an American colleague to ask him to contribute a chapter to a book on the basis of an article that he'd written. And his response was, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to find out somebody's actually read it, his article. because he said, you know, we publish and we publish and we publish, and apart from the reviewers and the editor, we never know if anybody actually reads the thing when it appears. And so it's perpetually puzzled me why that model has had its own life cycle. It is a broad, generalized, descriptive model. And I suppose because it describes reality, to some extent it has its own life. And it's simplistic. A model is a sort of limited view of reality. I think it's still valid in the general conclusions that most places in tourism will develop, and if we are not proactive, as Eduardo said, and I think proactive is a crucial word there, then most places will end up in the kind of problems that we see places in and which the model suggested could happen. But, you know, the subtitle of the model was management of resource, implication for management of resources. So it was arguing that we shouldn't end up in decline. That's what would happen if we didn't do things properly and if we weren't proactive. Now, I think over the years we have become a little more proactive, and the successes like Barcelona require that we do more than simply make the success. It's a question of stabilizing and maintaining the success in many places now. Not getting success, but keeping success. So maybe if you got rid of Messi and lowered the standard of football in Barcelona, the attraction would go down a little bit. But seriously, I think the model, you know, has validity, and it still carries a message that if we do not do things appropriately, then we will end up with overdevelopment or inappropriate development and loss of appeal and loss of attraction. And that's really all it was saying. The more important questions are why. Why do we overdevelop? Why do we not see things happening? Why do we not respond? What are the key triggers? So I saw that model as a sort of introduction to the way tourist places develop, not the answer. And it's a question of chipping away and finding the answers to the reasons why things happen. It's fairly easy to say what happens. It's explaining why. And, you know, yesterday Jafar said we must become practical. I'm glad I've retired because I am totally impractical. I've never done anything in tourism except be a tourist. If I've contributed anything, it is about tourism. So that model, I think, is about how places develop and how they perhaps should be controlled from developing. So I think it has a role in the future, if only to show us what we need to pay attention to and to get a better understanding of what tourism is and does.
So who would like to have second questions? Yes.
Hi, the audience and the staff. Thank you for your sharing so far. My question is particularly for Dr. Sheldon.
Sorry, could you kindly give us your name and your institution?
Yes. My name is Yeung from the University of UNWTO, Da Nang City, Vietnam. And change, shift, adjustment, modification constantly happens. Some are expected, but some are not. So my question is, from the tourism business perspective, could you offer some recommendations for the tourism business, a way or method, application, how to adapt with some unexpected change?
So can you repeat a little bit more? Do you ask for the recommendations from
Yes,
the
my question
speaker?
is, could you offer some recommendations for the tourism business, how to adapt the work to some unexpected changes? in the future?
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll give it a shot. Well, one of the things I think needs to shift is this focus on short run versus long run. And unless businesses really start to incorporate, long run into their strategic decision making, I think we're in trouble. That's one thing. I think there are so many new models now of different kinds of tourism businesses that are much closer to solving the problems and some of the issues that are facing us as humanity. Capitalism has had its run for many decades and is starting to crumble, but there's a whole new era of conscious capitalism now, where firms are moderating their profit desires and they're looking much more to the value that they bring to communities. Social entrepreneurship is growing in the tourism sector also. So where the desire to contribute to the well-being of the community in addition to making profit, but that is first and profit is second, is another model that we're seeing growing rapidly around the world. A lot of these things are happening in the economy in general, but tourism is quite slow, it seems, to be able to lift these up. I just finished a book on social entrepreneurship and tourism, trying to profile some of the ways in which our sector can, be available and closer to the community and closer to creating some positive impacts that it already has. I think another thing that we have to do as an industry is, and as a society as well, is to question growth. It's all about growth, 2% growth, 3% growth. Can we as a planet sustain this economic growth, or should we, and tourism too. Dick talked about Venice and Eduardo about Barcelona. So I think tourism businesses perhaps, should not always be driven by these targets of growth and should start to be reflective about what their real mission is and what is the contribution they're making. But there are so many new models of operating as a business in tourism, and I think the more that we can understand them and see the impact, I think the better it will be. So I welcome your question, and I think there's a lot of things that can be done. Thank you.
Even though the question was directed to Prof. Sheldon, I want to add few comments. You're talking about tourism businesses. We have to realize that most tourism businesses are not huge international multinational conglomerates. They are small to medium-sized businesses. So we have to take that to the lower operational level to answer your question. Look, this hotel icon as an example. When we came with this idea, university investing such a huge amount of money, developing hotel primarily for teaching and research. In fact, we are teaching using this hotel in many courses, or hotel managers are teaching as well. And then trying to make it commercially viable, making profit. People said, you are naive, you are innocent, how you can do that? Academics, you know how to teach or do research, but you don't know how to run business. But it has proven that this hotel is very successful in many, many ways. By independent, objective indicators like TripAdvisor always ranked this hotel among top 5 in Hong Kong. We are running a 90-some% occupancy rate, average rate of $250 or above, and generating annual net surplus of $8 or $9 million every year. So how did it happen? In one word, is innovation. I think tourism businesses are not particularly innovative in my view, because we are doing the same thing every day without really questioning, is that the best way? The reason why Hotel Icon has been successful is because we question, is this the best way? Is there a better way of doing it? There are many, many examples. Those who are staying in Hotel Icon may have experienced something like free mini bar, as an example. Because every hotel, business hotel, has a free mini bar in the room. And then according to research, only 4% of the hotel guests are using minibar. 96% don't use them because they are expensive. Nonetheless, when you are checking out, they are asking you, "Sir, did you use anything in minibar last night?" 96% said, "No, I didn't use anything." Some hotels don't even trust you. They call housekeeping, go and check the room. In Chinese, they are using the word inspect the room. Sounds like you did something terrible. And they said, "Oh, one can of Coke is missing. You have to pay $3. Guest said, "No, I didn't drink Coke. I never drink Coke in my life, by the way." Well, they said, "Still you have to pay $3 because one can of Coke is missing, because maybe there was miscount of the item." If you think about this, you are having a dispute over this can of Coke, which cost 50 cents at wholesale price, with the guest who paid $300 last night. That's a nonsense, and the guest is living with bad taste. So in this hotel, we just flip the thinking. Why don't we just give the minibar free? It costs few dollars a day to provide those things. Just way of thinking has to be changed. Innovation. I think that's why I think we always challenge our young students, future leaders in our industry, always think something out of the box and be innovative. I think to me that is an answer. We have to be innovative. Thank you.
Could I just add something to your answer, Kaye? Very briefly, I just wished I'd said about the customers. I mean, tourism businesses have to really understand who the new customers are today. And I recently participated in a study with WTO about the new transformational tourists, people who are looking to make a difference when they travel, make a difference to the communities, make a difference to themselves. And the research shows that there is a significant number of people traveling the world today who want to contribute to the destination, who have a sense of benevolence when they travel. Who are looking for opportunities to engage with the communities in a productive way. And so if we can harness that desire on the part of the customers, I think the businesses can benefit from that, as can the community. Thank you.
I'd like to add a little bit to your question, which is a very ambitious question, and I think deserves some consideration. Let me put it in a formula, including several things that already Professor Sheldon and Professor Chon already mentioned. And in a formula is three things. The first one is, and it's an advice, be humble, be ambitious, but be informed. In other words, if you want to have success yourself as a person or in your business, I think I would take the approach that has been mentioned here several times. Be humble, take a humble attitude, but be very ambitious at the same time, and know your market. And know your market in two ways. Professor Sheldon pointed out the importance of having a long-range view, but also short-term. To get to the long-term, you have to survive the short-term. So both things. The second one, I think Professor Chon said beautifully, which is you have to innovate. I mean, we are going to face very fast-changing markets, and Professor Butler also mentioned that. We are going to face very much changing scenarios and markets, and you have to innovate. But wait a minute, innovation without investment, and again, Professor Chon pointed that out, innovation without investment goes nowhere. So we need more mechanisms for a small and medium enterprise to get capital. And to be able to perform the innovation. And the third one is go through, implement it. It's not enough to think and to analyze. It is not enough to have good ideas about how to invest and even to innovate, unless you run the show properly. And with that, I would like to summarize perhaps what I have in mind about your question.
Thank you very much. We have room for one more question from our audience.
Thank you. We have gone through a whole range of developments over the years. We're 2017, and the next 10 to 12 years we'll have robotics and robots managing a lot of what tourism is going to be delivering. And I'm wondering whether you see how these innovations are going to fit into what we offer, and whether you should see benefits or things that are going to go against the tourism that we know. The only thing that's really clear is that tourism of the future will not be like the tourism of the past.
Sorry, sir, your name and...
My name is Dimitris Bouchalis from Bournemouth University.
Thank you very much.
I can can take a stab at that. Thank you, Demetrius. Yeah, we haven't talked much about technology, have we? Future of tourism is changing. Future of work is changing even more dramatically, as you said, with artificial intelligence, virtual reality, robotics. I think a lot of professions are going to just drop away. What are those people going to do? Given that they have means, they're going to travel, right? And so what they will be looking for are much more meaningful kinds of experiences when they travel, rather than a place to have some leisure and relax so they can go back to work. So I think there's a fundamental restructuring that will happen as more and more jobs are automated. Now, some of those people will, of course, go into higher level jobs and hopefully, solve some of our problems that way. But I think the tourism industry needs to get ready for a big shift created by people traveling rather than working. That's one thing.
I'll say the question is vital. I see a real paradigm shift in the no more than the next 20 years. And this paradigm shift will go in the way of many, as Professor Sheldon said, many professions which actually be outmoded. And what do we do with people who not only, as someone has said, not only are unemployed, but are unemployable? And what happens to tourism demand under those circumstances? And what happens to some of the tourism professions? So I don't have an answer. I think these are tremendous questions. And my only answer is we have to be ready for do some innovation in governance. I mean, innovation is not only technology, not only science, it's not only market processes, it's also the way we administer ourselves. And unless we are able and ready to do some changes, some big changes in the way we do governance for everyone, we are set for big trouble. But that is not going to happen. We are going to be optimistic, and then we have great hopes in all of you, and the way we have to go with the world. We have come this far, and I'm sure we'll keep going.
Thank you very much, all professors. We are now at the end of the sections. So,
thank you very much. Shall we put our hands together for our professors? Professor Sheldon, thank you very much. Professor Chon, thank you. Professor Fayos-Solà, thank you. Professor Butler, thank you very much.
Thank you to both of you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. As a token of our appreciation for the honorable speaker's valuable contribution, we would like to present certificates to the honorable speakers. For the following appreciation, we would like to invite Professor Chon to kindly present the certificates to other honorable speakers. So, may I now invite Professor Brian King to present the honorable speakers. So first, we would like to invite Professor Chon to receive the appreciation.
I cannot give to myself.
Got to be humble, right?
Secondly, we would like to invite Professor Pauline Sheldon to receive the appreciation. Professor Sheldon, please. Then we would like to invite Professor Eduardo Fayos-Solà to receive the appreciation. Professor Eduardo Fayos-Solà, please. Next, we would like to invite Professor Richard Butler to receive the appreciation. Professor Butler, please. Thank you very much, and please remain on stage for group photo taking. Professor Brian King, please remain on stage. Thank you very much. As a token of our appreciation for the section chair's valuable contribution, may I invite Professor Brian King to kindly present the certificates to the section chairs. Now I would like to invite Ms. Vanessa Yeung to receive the appreciation. Ms. Yeung, please. Next, we would like to invite Mr. Felix Otoo to receive the appreciation. Mr. Felix Otoo, please. Please take a group photo together. Thank you very much. Please be seated. For your information, the certificate is the donation appreciation. By demonstrating our corporate social responsibility, on behalf of the speakers, we would like to make a donation to New Life Psychiatric Rehabilitation Association, which is an organization aimed at promoting mental health and mental well-being in the community. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your active participation today. Before the end of this section, we have some warm reminders for all of you. Now, please join the refreshment break and poster section at B1 floor and function room 123. You can take the staircase from Skybridge or the elevator to the B1 level. After the refreshment break, the concurrent section paper presentation 4 will be held at function room number 4, function room number 7, and the third floor of SHTM. For paper presentation, please be reminded that all the presenters need to come to the corresponding venue 10 minutes earlier. Then, at 12:30, the luncheon will be held at Silver Box Ballroom after the concurrent section. Please come back here for lunch. For more information, you can refer to the details in the program booklet and mobile applications. For the delegates who haven't collected their certificate of attendance, please go to the register counter at Skybridge at the end of this section. Thank you very much for your participation. See you later.